Welcome, gentlemen and ladies, to this Friday special edition of, well, our live show. And why aren't we doing it on Monday like we usually do, Tommy?
I'm not really sure. Why aren't we doing it on Monday?
Well, because we're not here Monday.
Oh, that's right.
We're going to Uray, actually, to do a special secret, well, it's not secret, but it could be secret, series of videos. We're calling for a few bucks less. So if you watched No Pavement Needed, that turned into To Hell and Back, well, the next set of videos that we're doing is called For a Few Bucks Less.
Very right. So we've got 3 new affordable vehicles.
Yep.
Not going to ruin the surprise, but if you want the surprise ruin, you could probably find 2 of them on TFL Classics. And we are going to take these 3 cheap vehicles off-road. It was a $2,500 budget, and we got some real stinkers. So be sure to stay tuned on TFL Truck.
Yep.
And we will have the series coming soon as fast as our chief editor can get it done.
Well, as soon as we can film it.
Oh, we got to film the last part.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen in the last episode.
That's right.
It could be dramatic.
Big thank you to everybody watching live today. 112 people have joined us. Just in Case just gave us $2.
Thank you, Just in Case.
And he will launch us into our first topic of the day.
Which is news?
Any updates on a 4xe Gladiator for 2022?
So Jeep has confirmed that they're going to electrify all of their Jeeps. So that means that there probably is a 4xe Gladiator coming, but the next one that we certainly know is coming is the Grand Cherokee 4xe. We know that is coming.
And currently in the new generation of Grand Cherokee WL, you can only get it in the 3-row, the 7-seater, but there is a 2-row coming as well. Jeep has teased the plug-in hybrid of that, so no news on the Gladiator. I have a feeling that that is going to show up soon here as well. Our buddy Tim Esterdal's in the chat today.
Hey Tim, nice to have you joining us. Thank you very much. And let's talk about the news, Tommy, and that is actually really appropriate topic because Jeep just announced that they're raising the price of the Wrangler 4xe, but get this, $3,000.
Ooh, that is a big raise.
That's a big number, dude.
Very big raise. So the Wrangler is currently the only 4xe right now in America that you can buy in the Jeep lineup, and it's what they call a plug-in hybrid. So it combines both gasoline and electric powertrains. So the way it works is you plug it in at home overnight, for example. It will go 21 miles according to the EPA on a single charge. But the good news is when that battery is depleted, it just goes over to good old-fashioned dyno juice, and then you can drive another few hundred miles on gasoline as just a normal hybrid. So some people are really excited by the 4xe technology coming to an off-roader, but the new price, the 4xe will start now at $52,520, the Rubicon at $56,220, and the high altitude at $58,000. Woo!
So there's a little bit of controversy around the 4xe, and we're going to get into that, I think, Tommy. So let's talk about the controversy, and then let's talk about our video coming up this weekend where we actually took it up red cone in all electric mode. And I want to have you guys take a guess in the comments, and we'll let you know. And if you watched the previous video, you'll probably know what the answer is, but take a guess. How far do you think it went up in all electric mode up red cone? I'll give you a couple hints. Jeep says that the 17 kilowatt hour battery is good for 21 miles of all electric range.
Yep.
And when Nathan did his range test on our loop, he actually got 27?
27, yep.
27 miles.
That was in a mix of highway and city driving.
So how far, that's the question of the day, do you think it went up red cone in low on all electric power?
Yes, and if you watched, as my dad said, Bronco versus Defender versus Wrangler, that's a pretty big teaser in there, but it's not much. So
can I talk about the controversy?
What's the controversy?
So the electric car community has its collective undies in a bundle because here's the deal. A lot of people are buying the 4xe because, first of all, you get the federal credit of $7,500.
Yes.
And in Colorado, you get another $3,500, so you
Yes.
get $10,000 off the price if you qualify, or you can build that into a lease, and it actually makes it the least expensive Rubicon you can buy. So if, let's say you walk into a dealership, and if they actually had one, which they probably don't now, but let's say they did, and you wanted the least expensive one, you would probably walk out with the 4xe, and I'm talking about the Rubicon. But this is where the electric folk get all upset. Potentially, if you bought it for that reason, you may never plug it in. And if you don't ever plug it in, it actually becomes a very thirsty vehicle because you're carrying around not only an engine, but a motor and a battery. So it's very heavy.
Well, it's about 2 mpg worse if you run it on gasoline than an equivalent 2-liter turbo Rubicon. So I think that's the difference between 20 and 22 mpg combined. And now, here's the deal with the 4xe. Tim just commented 3K upcharge makes the ROI even worse for the Wrangler 4xe. Well, before the 3K 4xe, it was an incredible lease deal. And I'm really not familiar in how those lease deals work because it's a whole world that's just very complicated. But if you went into the dealer and walked in with the intention to lease a Wrangler, any Wrangler, the 4xe is the one to lease because the monthly cost is just insane for what you get. And it's very interesting. I wasn't sure that I'd see a lot of these 4xes on the road, but here in Boulder, I'm seeing them absolutely everywhere, which is super surprising. I think it's appealing to a lot of folks that maybe wanted a Wrangler, but didn't want to deal with the cost to run it for their commute, didn't want to deal with kind of the negative backlash they might get from their neighbors for buying such an unfuel efficient vehicle. And they're just everywhere. Really cool to see.
So it's got 3 buttons, and they're all cool, right? So the button that we use to go up red cone is a button called e-save, and what it allows you to do is basically save the electric battery for when you get to the trailhead, right?
Well, getting to red cone, we ran it in e-save. The second we arrived at the trailhead, we had like 95% state of charge, and then we clicked it into electric mode, and that locks it into EV only for the off-roading, for example, and then we used it till the battery died and it kicked on the gas engine.
And then you've got hybrid mode, which lets you kind of get the best of both worlds, but theoretically you could run hybrid mode without ever plugging it in at night, and that's when you get the bad fuel economy because that's when you're carrying around the extra weight and not having the advantage of the battery. So anyway, are people guessing how far we went up?
Yeah, they're pretty much spot on because they saw the first video. Yeah,
it was shocking. It was, well, you tell them.
Well, it was about 3 miles, 3.4 miles, but that was straight uphill, off-road, lockers on and off, sway bar disconnect on and off, low range, absolutely.
All right, but the cool thing about that is, and I just got back, we're going to talk about this as well, I just got back from the new Hyundai Santa Cruz, which of course is the new compact pickup truck.
Right.
Ute.
Yep.
Trucklet, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I was telling the journalist this, and I said, you know what? You can extrapolate how far the Lightning will go off-road, how far the Cybertruck will go off-road in electric mode only, how far the Rivian. Because let's say you multiply, let's say it's a 100 kilowatt hour battery, so multiply that number by 5-ish, and you're at anywhere from 15 to 20 miles of all electric range for those 3 vehicles, if they indeed have a 100 kilowatt hour battery, which is not a lot, dude.
Keep in mind, too, this was the most extreme situation of poor efficiency. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, the Wrangler only went 3.4 miles, but I think on the gas vehicles, we were probably doing low single-digit MPG numbers. But
yeah, and we talked about that as well with the journalist, right?
The difference is, of course, is that you can refill your gasoline car with a jerry can on the side of the trail. And if you had a electric vehicle, realistically, you need a DC fast charger, which would require like 3-phase power, which is not going to be anywhere near the trail. And these Jeep Adventure stations and Rivian are installing these level 2 chargers. Those typically would be like 6 to 7 hours to full. The Wrangler actually has a really fast onboard charger, but it would still be 2 to 3 hours to full.
So let's talk about, you know, you're saying, well, we went up straight up a mountain, and so you've got all this weight of the battery, plus the motor, yada, 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 so it's using a lot of power, right? But think about it this way, Tommy. If you went in the sand, right, what are the quickest sand vehicles? There's those little sand rails, and the sand rails basically are these massive V8 engined vehicles with, you know, like a very light cage, and a very light structure, so they ride above the sand and don't fall into the sand. So very high horsepower, very high energy use if it's a battery. And then let's talk about the other use which people do here in America, which is mudding, right? Same thing, right? Big tires, big V8s, a lot of power usage there as well. So I think if you're sanding, or if you're mudding, or if you're climbing, it's just going to use a lot of power. And how about the Lordstown that ran Baja? How far did they get before they ran out of juice?
They were very careful on their wording. So they went about 50 miles, and they said that they had miscalculated their power usage out on Baja. But before you get so negative here, Dad, before you go to grumpy Dad.
I'm being realistic. I'm just saying the numbers are much lower than people, I think, are expecting. Because let's face it, a 100 kilowatt hour battery in a Tesla will get you at least 300 miles of range on road.
So $499 from Michael Marshall, thank you,
Michael.
sir. I would like to see a EV series on mudding, or I'd like to see a series on EV modding. Excuse me, I read that wrong.
I'd rather do mudding.
Range,
if I do mudding, that's more fun.
Range, power, style, etc. Is this a realistic consideration for TFL? So very interesting point. It's going to be quite difficult to modify these electric cars because a lot of it. We did?
Yeah, we tried to build an adventure. That's why we bought the Tesla Model X, right? We wanted to turn it into an off-roader, so we bought the Model X, and we had all these grand plans. We were gonna put, a wrap on it to make it adventure. We were gonna stick a jerry can full of like D-size batteries on it. We were gonna put a snorkel on it for you know what and grin. And then when we tried to do the very first thing, which was put a much more off-roady tire, what happened? You tell them what happened.
Yeah, the upper control arm was extruded past the tire essentially and made it so you couldn't put a larger tire. I have a feeling that's probably on purpose from Tesla so that you don't put too large of a tire on it. But anyways, we probably could have worked through that with extensive modifications of the vehicle. We could have.
And there was somebody who did a Model Y, an off-roady Model Y.
Yeah, and he's used that thing a lot, by the way. That thing gets a lot of use, which is interesting.
And then the other thing that I was a little terrified of, and before you start calling me a wussy out there, let me just explain. We took it into the mountains above Boulder, and of course the Tesla's battery pack is right underneath the vehicle, right? And so the reason we bought the Model X is because of the air suspension, but I was terrified of like dropping the X onto a pointy rock and starting a fire that would engulf the entire state of Colorado, because those battery fires don't go out on their own.
Keep in mind, it's worth noting, and we're going to do some more investigation into this, but the amount of shielding that these new EVs have underneath is absurd to protect against road debris, to protect against tires in the road, curbs, right? They have to have a very strong structure surrounding the battery.
So Tesla has a Teflon, not a Teflon, I think is it a Teflon or carbon? I think it's a carbon, it's like a carbon fiber weave or something underneath the bottom of the car, because there was that Model S that like started on fire when a piece of road debris, punctured the battery. But dude, I mean, first of all, it's very heavy, right? And you drop it onto a pointy rock, unless there's like a serious skid plate under there, it's going to puncture the battery.
Well, how did Jeep do it? Jeep was able to accomplish putting a large battery in the Wrangler, 17.3 kilowatt hours. That is not an insignificant battery. What they did is they positioned the battery above the frame rails, so it's well out of the way. With
a big skid plate. It's
also heavily skid plated, and the cool thing about the 4xe is it is just as capable as other Wranglers in the lineup, and I think we did a pretty good job of proving that with its off-road testing, where you can just slam skid plates and slam it around off-road on the rocks like other Wranglers, and it will be fine. It also has the same water fording capabilities of the Wranglers, and I specifically asked the chief engineer of that vehicle, talk to me about the water fording capabilities and the potential for intrusion for water into the electrical system, and it's very, very waterproof. So those connections, for example, the 400-volt connections that send power across the vehicle.
You drove through a little bog.
Yeah, but the connections themselves across all EVs are very controlled and very resistant to water entering them, which is a very cool thing. So we got a lot of questions coming in, Dad, and I think maybe we should take a few minutes to
let's answer those questions. But let me kind of wrap up with the electric Jeep. The cool part of off-roading an electric Jeep was that you can hear like the brook babbling, you can hear the wind whistling through the trees, and really the only thing you hear from the Jeep is kind of the creaking and groaning of the suspension as it's crawling over the rocks, and then every so often when you hit a skid plate you can hear that. But it really is a whole different feel being out there, kind of, I hate to say this, but it's a cliche, but it's true, kind of at one with nature, versus like a side-by-side where it's just roaring up the mountain, shedding a lot of carbon dioxide and noise pollution.
So most of the questions are kind of related to this topic. Someone asked me, so I just bought like my own little baby Wrangler. Should I have bought the 4xe given the price? So the deal with the tax credit is you still have to pay the price of the vehicle. So it's $56,000. It's not like you go to the dealer and they give you $7,500 back right away. The way it works is it'd be $56,000, and then when you are paying your taxes, you'd get the money back there. The deal is, though, you have to have a tax liability of greater than the amount that the government's giving you back. So for example, my tax liability is nowhere near $7,500. So my liability might be, say, $2,000, and then I would get $2,000 back. It's not like they're going to pay me $5,000 on top of my liability.
And because it's so heavy, and if you own a business, you can also take advantage of the accelerated depreciation aspect of our tax code, so the so-called Hummer tax incentive.
Yes.
So it's kind of got a double
the
tax.
GVW over 6,000. I do think it makes a lot of sense, and my advice would be, don't buy one, because I'm still a little bit on the fence about the long-term reliability of the vehicle. I think there's a lot going on. It's not just a Jeep thing, it's just my personal opinion for plug-in hybrids. There's a lot of complexity. I would go out and lease one for 3 years, take advantage of the insane monthly payments that you can get them for, and then at the end of that lease determine, is electric right for me?
Well, so right now, I would say, in the past, before we've had this COVID and before we've had the chip shortage and the supply chain issues, right? Electric vehicles were being subsidized by the government, right? The government was basically paying us to buy them, whether it was a federal tax credit or a state tax credit, or the fact that you can get into HOV lanes, but they were depreciating rapidly. So remember, we've gone through a series of California compliance cars where we were buying those things for like $7K, and those were $30,000, $35,000 vehicles. Now, with what's happening in the auto industry, electric cars are becoming much sought after, and there's this pendulum swing that's going to happen, right? Where all of a sudden, and we're kind of sitting in the middle of the industry, and so I think if you're on the outside, and the number right now in America is 2%. So 2% of all car sales are either electric or hybrid. Not even all electric, but hybridized, right? That's very small. Germany just went to 19, Norway's like at 60, it's crazy. But anyway, sitting in the middle of this, we're seeing what's coming down the road. There's every manufacturer out there is saying we're going to switch to all electric vehicles by pick your year. And a lot of those are kind of pie in the sky promises, but nevertheless, they're all saying it, right? So they are coming, and I think people are starting to realize that, and I think people are starting to realize that there are great incentives that are going to go away for them. And so electric vehicles have actually gotten very expensive. Like if you want a Tesla right now, good luck. I think Model Y's production is sold out through the end of the year. A Plaid is, 130,000 and almost ungettable. I think the Mach-E is actually selling in urban areas at least very well. The ID4 is, I'm not sure if that's going to be a winner or loser yet, but right now it's kind of on the cusp of either of those.
So I know you're all about the pendulum swinging quickly, but there's been a lot of actual business theory around the adoption of new technologies. And there's a theory established in the early 1960s called the diffusion of innovations. And basically what that is, it's the graph and the rate at which consumers adopt new technologies. And there's a great book called Crossing the Chasm called Jeffrey Moore. And basically what this looks at is how consumers are willing to buy new pieces of tech, be it like phones, be it electric cars, be it this world. And what they've discovered time and time again is that if you look at the, the 5 different adoptions, be it early adopters, you've got the majorities, right? In order for a piece of new tech to be successful, it has to cross the chasm. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Which is the 4% adoption rate.
I also heard the sound of people like clicking out of this video.
It's seriously interesting.
Let's get back to talking about cars instead of showing off your college knowledge, Tommy.
Yes, statistically though, at 4%, a vast majority of new technologies fail. We have to get past that 4%.
I think about the iPhone and how quickly smartphones became not just adopted, but became indispensable to our lives.
But that took a long time. I mean, BlackBerry's been around for such a long time.
Yeah.
We forget what a long ramp up it took.
Not
decades
centuries.
for your smartphone. They have a new iPhone every 9 minutes. I can't keep up anymore. I think it's
all right, what are some other questions?
It's going to be very interesting to see. Did you know the viewership actually went up
during your
professorial
debut, Tommy?
Time? Yeah, very interesting. So more questions going on here. Lots of questions about
trucks?
No, are you going to review the new Model S and X?
I'd love to review the new Model X and S, but how do we get our hands on one? Tesla, as you know, has decided that they're no longer going to have a PR department, and so they've basically turned Mr. Musk's Twitter feed into their PR department, which we'll see how that works out for them. I'm a little afraid of that because if it does work out, I can see other car companies going that same route. But you know, in my years on this earth, I've learned that the reason car companies have PR departments is not because they necessarily want them, but because over the years they've learned that they need them. And so we'll see how it goes with Tesla getting rid of all their PR people. I have my doubts about what will happen when the what hits the fan and there's no PR department.
You upset a lot of people there.
Why?
By letting me not talk about my statistics.
Oh, did I? People are angry at me?
Yes, people actually liked my statistics.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting study.
Well, come back next week when Tommy debuts his new podcast.
I think it's cool.
All stats all the time.
At the end of the
day,
day,
theory of new product adoption.
Electric cars are a new piece of technology, and
yes.
if you look at the curves that new technologies take, I think it's going to fall in pretty much exactly the same. Now, the thing that's going to change
talk about trucks?
Well, we're not. This is not the truck podcast. Andre's not here. The thing that's going to change that curve and change the adoption rate is going to be government intervention. Like you talked about, right? So, for example, there are new discussions on the table.
Can we talk about electric trucks at least?
There's new discussions on the table about changing the federal tax credits, maybe increasing them. So we'll see how that has an impact on adoption. We've got a question Outback Wilderness video coming up this weekend, or I think it's next week.
I see Matt, he's editing it over there.
Next week,
yes. He's still working on it.
We've got the Outback Wilderness versus a Crosstrek off-road.
This week we've got on off-road the Jeep Wrangler in all-electric mode, how far we went and what it was like. So that's coming up on off-road this weekend. And by the way, guys, we do have a new way of keeping track of all of our stuff. You know, we've kind of expanded to having 7 YouTube channels, 4 websites, 2 podcasts, 1 TikTok channel. And if you want to find a place where all that stuff is, just go to TFL-studios.com. And what you can do is you can go there and you can see all the newest news, all the newest videos, all the newest podcasts, all in one place. And then if you like it, you can actually make it a little web app shortcut on your phone, and then use it to keep track of everything that's going on if you're interested, and if you want to know what videos are coming up, because it lists all the videos immediately from all the channels.
Matthew says, what is the first EV truck TFL will buy?
I would love to buy whatever is the first EV truck out there. So we would love to buy like a Rivian, but we don't have a reservation now for one.
Okay.
It was $2,500 3 years ago at the LA Auto Show when they actually unveiled it, and to give Rivian a $2,500 loan for 3 years was just not doable from a business perspective.
Very interesting. Okay. Why did electricity become the dominant alternative energy source over hydrogen fuel cell? Isn't hydrogen better?
Yeah, probably, but there's no hydrogen infrastructure. So the one thing, here's another weird thing, right? I talk to a lot of people about Tesla, and they all assume it's not an American car company. You see it all the time. It's like almost subconscious. Like even Jeep did it the other day. They were like, we're going to be the first all-American company to go all-electric. And I'm like, what about Tesla? They're American. And Tesla did something unique that no other car company has done and should do. So Tesla not only built the vehicle, but they built out the network, obviously, to power it. So I think if Hyundai or Honda want to get into the hydrogen business, they got to actually start building out hydrogen stations, because right now there's a total of like 45 of them in California, and that is all. So
interesting points here going on. Someone wants to talk about the Volkswagen ID Buzz. So a while ago, Volkswagen, this was a long time ago, basically showed a concept version of an all-electric replacement for their Volkswagen microvan, the microbus. And since then, it's been pretty much radio silence. But now the first production versions have been seen testing in Europe, and it's really, really ugly. Really, really don't like what they've done with it from the even somewhat mass prototypes.
So you know what the coolest part of that was? And they're actually using it in France now. The coolest part in the ID Buzz was you could take your iPad, right? And you could actually, that was your dashboard. So you would take your iPad, you would click it into place in the dashboard of the Volkswagen bus, and then you would use that to control your HVAC, your radio, everything. I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. And then now in the, what are those French cars called that you can buy and drive at 15?
They're like little quadricycles.
Yeah.
So
there's a quadricycle.
Sans permis is what they're called, and they're these basically, in France, if you lose your driver's license or if you're 14, you're allowed to buy a small, low displacement and low speed vehicle that you can drive on public roads. I think they have to go under 26 miles an hour.
So was it Renault or Peugeot that built one? Do you remember?
No, it's called the Citroën ME.
Citroën.
And it's this little box.
ME, yeah.
You can rent it for like 30 euros a month, or you can buy one for a few thousand euros. And it's this cute little adorable two-seater with a plastic interior. It goes 26 miles an hour. It goes about 40 miles on a single charge.
And it uses your phone to be the little control thing for it. So you plug your phone in, and that becomes a little control. And to save money, this is so French. They basically use the same plastic casting for the front and the back. So the front and the back, it looks like it's coming or going or going or coming. Matt Watson has a really fun video of it on YouTube. So if you want to check out this really cool little French thing, it's up on YouTube.
So someone says JLU Extreme Recon Thoughts. So Jeep, to combat the Sasquatch version of the Bronco, is launching a factory Wrangler on 35-inch tall tires called the Extreme Recon. It's a $4,000 option on certain trims. I'm not so sure that it's all that worth it, to be honest with you. I think that the cool thing about the Sasquatch package of the lockers and the 35s is you can get them across the board. The Extreme Recon is just basically an upgraded tire axle kit on Rubicons already, and people are doing that on the aftermarket.
And you know how you can tell besides looking at the 35s?
How?
The little fender flares are a little bit wider.
Okay.
They got these little extensions so that they stick across the bigger tires. It's pretty cool.
Buhanka update. Yes, Andre got his little Russian van in yesterday.
I'm looking at it right there.
Yes, he's
it's
very
so
excited.
cute. It's so cute. That video will go up later next week. So yeah, it's just wait for the video. It's there, and it's such a cute. It looks like a cartoon character. It's got a nose and a mouth and two eyes and two little dimples where the turn signals are.
It's very big.
It's
Andre
big.
didn't mention that it's very much a large van. It looks very surprised always. It's got an interesting face. GSX 95R. What do you think about the Dodge Performance EVs?
We don't know much about the Dodge Performance EVs, right? Because they kind of came out and they said, we're not building muscle cars, and then they said, we're not building electric cars, and they said, oh, but we are building electric muscle cars, and that's about as far as it went. And you could see the silhouette underneath the vehicle, but we don't know much about them.
Dave Murphy, $25. Very kind of you.
Thank you, Dave.
Really appreciate the super chats. We don't ask for them, but it's very kind of you to support the team. He says, thanks for all the great content. Do you still have the 87 911? Ah.
Yeah. Oh, God, that was. So where do we start with that? Well, let's put it this way. We've had it for 6 months, and I've actually owned it in my possession for 2 weeks. It's been at the shop now for the last 3 months, 3.5 months, and every 2 weeks I call them and they'll be like, yeah, it'll be done next week, and it isn't. So I'm getting really frustrated and really bummed because they've been trying to fix the top, they've been trying to fix the steering wheel, the radio, the little computer, old-fashioned computer under the seat, where the soldering came apart.
Yeah, so the engine management system has actually been totally restored, basically. It was sent out, resoldered, and redone. So hopefully that'll fix the stalling issues we've been having. And it's a pretty big job going through and fixing the convertible top because it's been very boogered up. A lot of welds broke on that. So
well, let's face it, we should have probably tried opening it up before we bought it.
Oh, definitely, yes, absolutely.
So it's been a learning lesson, and I can't feel too bad because I knew what I was getting into buying an old air-cooled Porsche, and yeah, I've certainly got into it up to my neck, or up to our neck. So why don't we talk about where I just came from, which is San Francisco, and getting hands-on with the new Santa Cruz.
Well, people are actually not so interested in that.
They're more right. If you don't want to hear about the Santa Cruz,
they're more interested in the Kona N, actually.
Yeah, the Kona N. Whoo! Kona N. Basically, it's the same powertrain in the Veloster N. I got behind the wheel. The driving impressions are embargoed, so I can't tell you how it drives, but I can talk about it. It's pretty badass. I mean, what you have is a classic recipe for a hot hatch, and best of all, two things. First, there's a little red button. Do you remember what it was called? The red button? The name of that? It's got a really weird name.
It had a funny name. Do you remember, Zach? It's like the N-Grin button.
N-Grin, very good, N-Grin. So it's a little red button, and what it does, the car has about 280 horsepower. When you push it, it gives you overboost for up to 20 seconds, and you get 10 more horsepower. So it's kind of like having a nitrous. You know, it's like that Fast and Furious where the nitrous goes zipping through the engine, but it isn't. It's just overboost. So that's cool. And then, because Albert Biermann, who used to be the guy who used to do the M division at BMW, is now doing the N division at Hyundai, added 2 N buttons. You know, like the M buttons on a BMW?
Yeah.
So you can configure these 2 blue buttons on the steering wheel to let you be like in track mode or in very high sports car mode. It changes, you know, the throttle acceleration. It changes the steering. It's pretty cool. And best of all, because it's a Kona, unlike the Veloster, it has a lot of practicality. So you can use it as an everyday vehicle, or if you want, you could, you know, put your family in it and go to work in it. And then, you know, there's plenty of room in the back for all your stuff. And the exhaust pipes, I'm not joking, Tommy, I could put my fist in the exhaust pipe. So there's two of them about this big. So
wow.
Old school hot hatch, big old 14-inch Brembo brakes. Tires on it are super sticky Pirelli Zeros, so definitely for track work. And stay tuned. There are only two in North America. I guess they brought one from Canada. There was a white one and like a robin's egg blue color, which is very popular right now, kind of like that blue on your shirt there, on the United States of America. And yeah, pretty crazy little car. Great to see Hyundai still doing a manual and an automatic, well, dual clutch version of that.
All right, talk about the Santa Cruz. What did you think of the Santa Cruz?
So, you know, I had an epiphany.
Okay.
So the Santa Cruz is going to compete directly with, of course, the upcoming Maverick, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, when you talk about the Maverick, you know, we just saw it. Me and Andre sat in it, did a complete like hands-on video with it. And since Ford builds trucks, to me, the Maverick feels like a truck, right? It's more upright. You know, the design language is more truck-like. But when you get in the Santa Cruz, since Hyundai doesn't build trucks, it feels more like the Aussies, like a Ute, right? And by the way, they're building those designed in California and built in Alabama. And they're only selling them here in North America. And you know, they had one there with like 2 surfboards in it, and it felt like that's where they were going for. They're calling it a sports adventure vehicle, Tommy. And you know, it's kind of for people who live in the city. So it feels more like a Ridgeline. Keep in mind, it's 7 inches shorter than a Ridgeline. So while it doesn't seem like a lot, it is much smaller. But when you get behind the wheel of it, because basically it's built on the Tucson chassis, it's like a Tucson. So if you didn't look in the back, you wouldn't know that there's a bed back there. So you feel like you're in a crossover, whereas in the Maverick, you kind of feel like you're in a truck, even though that's also built on a crossover. The other thing I would say is, if you guys haven't like experienced the Subaru Baja, which is the closest you're going to get to this thing, right? It's really hard to explain. Just if you're coming from the truck world, like we do, right? It's hard to explain how small a 4-foot bed is. It's pretty small. So, you know, think about like, you could maybe barely, if you put a caddy corner, put a dirt bike in there, you could put 2 bicycles kind of sort of in the thing, but then there's not a lot of room for anything else. You know, it's great if you're going to go out gardening and you need garden supplies, but a 4-foot bed, even with the tailgate down, which gives you a little bit more room, is pretty tiny. There are some thoughtful features like the Ridgeline. There's under the bed, you can lift it up, and there's a little cubby hole that has drain pipes. So if you want to tailgate, you could put your libation in there, whatever you want to drink with ice. What else is there? There's under seat storage in the back. So if you lift up the seats, they're like most pickup trucks. The back seats aren't too far forward, so you're not like, you know, straight up. There's a little window that you can open up manually, and it does come in 2 flavors. We were talking about this on our podcast. I'm probably not an off-roader, so the smaller of the 2 engines, same size, I think it's 2.5, either 2 or 2.5 liter. One's a turbo, one's a non-turbo. The smaller of the 2 gets you about 190 horsepower, the bigger about 280, but only the smaller.
The other way around. The 2.5 is a naturally aspirated one.
They're both 2.5s.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both 2.5s. One's a turbo, one's a non-turbo. Anyway, the smaller of the 2 engines, and normally aspirated, it's not small, it's just not turbocharged. You can get that with an automatic 8-speed, whereas if you go for the turbo, you've got to go with the 8-speed dual clutch, and dual clutches don't really work well off-road. So Tommy was saying he didn't think people would take this thing off-road. Yeah,
so the naturally aspirated engine is a very good unit. I've driven that a bunch, and I do like the turbo as well. I don't think that these new compact trucks are really being built with heavy-duty 4-wheel drive use in mind. If you look at like the old school mini trucks, they had solid axles, they had low-range transfer cases, they had body-on-frame construction.
None of that.
Yeah, the new group of mini trucks now, so the Santa Cruz and the Maverick, are both unibody and independent suspension, and they are single speed only in terms of gear reduction, no transfer cases. but I don't think that they really need to be. I think if you want to go off-road, you'll get a Tacoma TRD or like a Ranger FX4 or Colorado ZR2 or a Gladiator.
But here's a crazy thing. Payload on the Santa Cruz, 1,600 pounds, Tommy.
Well, that's the advantage of unibodies. They really have, the Ridgeline's the same way, and so is the Maverick. They have a huge amount of payload capacity.
Yeah, and all the journalists were like, how much can you put 1,600 pounds like in the bed? And we never really got it.
That's interesting, because on the launch of the...
We didn't get a straight answer on that, because they were saying it depends on how much the axle can take, and we're like, well, how much can the axle take? And then they were like, well, we'll have to get back to you.
So on the Santa Cruz, they told me the bed capacity is like 600 pounds.
That used to be the case, but now they moved away from that, and they said 1,600 pounds of payload, and you can put that wherever you want.
Okay.
So I don't know. It also tows 3.5 with the smaller of the engines, or the less powerful, and 5,000, which is 1,000 more than the Maverick, with the bigger. And get this, with the smaller power plant, I keep saying smaller, less powerful, it comes pre-wired from the factory with a 4-pin connector, but if you get the turbo, it comes with a 7-pin connector. Now the hitch, the tow hitch, is a factory or dealer installed option, if I recall right, but there is no brake controller. So if you're going to want a brake controller, you're going to have to use like a Prodigy wireless unit if you want a brake controller. But the Maverick can be had with a brake controller.
So we've got a lot of new discussions coming in, Dad, if you want to move on a little bit here.
Sure.
So a lot of questions about the Outback Wilderness. Should you get the Outback Wilderness over a standard Outback? And how does it compare to like a 4Runner? So my deal with the Outback Wilderness, I spent a day in it. I liked it, but I think I wouldn't get it over a standard Outback. I think the standard Outback's an excellent car as it is. There's no reason to pay the extra fee for a little bit more ground clearance and some extra orange bits and maybe a skid plate. Because off-road it was better, but it's not better to the point where I would consider it a replacement for a true low range.
I know. So thanks to our friends, what was the company who lent it to us?
Bean Camping Trailers.
Yeah, so Bean Camping Trailers wanted to show that they can actually tow a bean camper with the Wilderness, so they bought one, and then they been towing with it, and they brought it here. So thanks to them. So I didn't drive it. I saw it parked here, but I got to be honest, Tommy. If I looking at that thing, I saw it also at the Chicago Auto Show. It looks to me like a 10-year-old's idea of what an off-roader should be. It's just so like just screams like all the cues of off-road, but none of the hardware of off-road.
It does have a better final drive ratio, and it was certainly better off-road than our Crosstrek, a lot better. But the final drive ratio is not to a point, though, where it can come anywhere close to replacing like a 4Runner with a low range or even a base model Tacoma with a low range. It just doesn't have the gearing for that kind of thing, and it doesn't have the right articulation. So it's cooler looking. If you want a cooler looking Outback, it'll probably go a little bit further down the trail. But in my opinion, I would just save the money, get yourself an Outback, enjoy it on the dirt roads or whatever, and then if you want to get into more aggressive terrain, maybe spend that few $1,000s on like a Grand Cherokee, like an old clapped out Grand Cherokee.
So after spending like 2,000 miles behind the wheel of our Crosstrek, I think I figured out the Subaru thing, right? I think Subarus are great as overland vehicles, as long as you don't load them down. So our little 2-liter, is pretty pokey, and God help you if you put a rooftop tent on it and load the back up with stuff. All of a sudden that like 30 miles per gallon is going to go down to 20 mpg. So if you want to use it as an overlanding vehicle, as long as you kind of think about it as a factory ready overlanding vehicle, you're good. If you, on the other hand, decide, this is the part that I don't agree with Subaru, that this is a vehicle that can go toe to toe with a 4Runner or a Wrangler, or pick any of the traditional trucks that have a low range, and you decide to load it up with a rooftop tent and lift it and put big tires on it, then all of a sudden you're turning what is a really good car into something that I don't think it was ever designed to be. So
my deal with that is I don't think that Subaru is claiming that this is a competitor to Wrangler. I think it's more of actually the community surrounding the car that's very vocal in saying that it is very off-road worthy. But the issue is, and I've been talking to a lot of folks in the rescue and recovery services in our state and across the West, and it's turning into a point now where they're getting many calls for folks that are taking their Subarus to places that they just have no right to be and getting really stuck really quickly. And that's creating quite a lot of kind of issues on the trails and in the networks, because the lack of a final drive ratio that allow you to climb hills, the lack of articulation can get you into pretty nasty situations pretty quickly. I feel the same way about like the RAV4 Adventure. the RAV4 TRD off-road, the new Nissan Pathfinder, right? If it doesn't have a low range, I'm not really interested in recreationally taking it off-road.
Yeah.
Now, there are some channels that do. For example, great channel with a, what is that vehicle? A Honda Passport I've been talking to. He takes this thing everywhere, and it does quite well. He's got a lift kit on it. Hopefully, I'll get him on the channel.
I'm saying a Crosstrack is basically a lifted Impreza, right? I mean, it's you know what I mean saying? So it's like a factory already did all the work for you, and if you want to go and take a truck is designed, especially a body-on-frame truck or a 4Runner or a Wrangler, it's designed to be usable with more weight and more stuff bolted to it. Doesn't make it any more fuel efficient, but it doesn't make it like you know, horribly unusable. Whereas you start putting a lot of weight in a Subaru and you start lifting it and you start putting bigger tires on it, you've taken the magic that's built into the car and you've turned it into something that I think makes the vehicle worse, not better.
So lots of donations coming in. A huge thank you to those guys. Sherrod K sent us $24.99. A big thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We've got some more though. Carlos sent us 10,000 Colombian pesos.
Carlos, dude, I don't know how much that translates to US dollars. 25 Zach says, but thank you very much. That's cool. I've never had a 10,000 peso donation.
Travis says, can you guys help us out and start pushing Jeep to offer a rear locker in a lower package so we can have a more affordable off-roader versus Rubicon? He gave us $10. Thank you, Travis.
I think Ford is doing that.
Yeah, he's doing that pushing for us. I've been pushing that for a long time, actually. Whenever I talk to them, I give them heck about that. I think the traditional thought has always been that we're not going to offer any lockers until you get to the Rubicon to try to force the off-road community to spend more to get into the Rubicon. But then Ford came out on their full-size Bronco and basically just swept the rug with lockers. I mean, they're like giving them out like candy on every trim, right?
Locker here, a locker for you, a locker for you.
So I'm thinking
Look
that
under your seat, locker.
I'm thinking that now Jeep is going to have to respond with a more affordable locker.
I think, let's face it, you know, Jeep was the only player. There was nobody really seriously competing with Jeep, right? I mean, 4Runner sort of, kind of, but not a convertible. And so I think they had structured their model lineup in such a way that if you wanted something that was pretty crucial, like a locker, you had to kind of go up to the next level. So you had to get the next level of stuff that you didn't necessarily want, right?
But it goes beyond that though, Dad, because the locker is not like, oh, I've got a Sport, I can go up to a Willys. The locker is like, oh, I've got a Willys Sport, now I have to go up past Sahara, past the standard Willys, past the Freedom Edition, all this, all the way up to the Rubicon, which I think is somewhere like 10K more than what I paid for mine.
Yeah, from a Jeep point of view, that's good.
From a Jeep point of view, that is good.
But with Ford now basically, you know, bringing the game to them, it's going to force Jeep to either start adding features and functionality, and there's a lot of them that Jeep should be adding and should have had. So like, for instance, you know, the seats in a Wrangler for me are really tough. You know, there's that little pull thing to move the seat, you know, up and backward and forward, right? There's no electrification on it. There's no lumbar support. I mean, it's hard to swallow a vehicle with you know, a price tag of $50,000 that doesn't have lumbar support.
Someone comments, Jordan, I saw that couch at the furniture store. Is it comfortable? Not really. We just use it for this podcast, and it looks cool. Ralph says, can you do more videos on the Mini Electric?
Yeah, there's a lot more videos coming on that one. Tommy just did, this weekend we're doing one. So we did, I don't know, I started this series, nobody's watching it, but I like it, so we're going to keep doing it. We did a goofy drag race series where we had 4 minis that drag raced each other. So we took Tommy's classic Mini and drag raced it against the new electric Mini, and then we took the GP, which is the kind of sporty Mini, and drag raced it against the John Cooper Works, and the winner of that took on the electric Mini. So it was kind of like old versus electric versus new versus sporty.
Okay.
This weekend on car.
Moving on a little bit here. We've got some discussion about electrics because that seems to be the big topic of debate. Roger says PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, are here to stay for decades. Toyota was right, too lacking in infrastructure. It's a very interesting discussion because Toyota has historically been very behind on the adoption of a full battery electric vehicle, moving away from the internal combustion engine. But it's worth noting too, Toyota was one of the first to the market with a hybrid that combines the two technologies. and they've really been pushing the hybrid. There was a blip in the early 2010s where they came out with a model called the RAV4 EV, and Elon basically screwed Mr. Toyoda on the production of that vehicle. They had this agreement, and then Elon basically said, nope, we're going to change the price of the drivetrain, because the RAV4 EV used the electric drivetrain, jacked it up to like well past 60,000, and that was a big deal. And as I understand it, in Japanese culture, that was a really big blow to their, their kind of reputation and their morale and their self-esteem. So that was a huge deal, and that was, I've heard, is one of the reasons they're so far behind. But I think Toyota might be smart in offering hybrids across the board. It's a great way to save fuel efficiency without sacrificing reliability in Toyota's case.
So here's something interesting. I just came back from the Audi e-tron GT program, and I was talking to a lot of the journalists. A lot of journalists there were like, they write for like Inside EVs or Electech. You know, these are the kind of electric publications. And by the way, we didn't do TFL EV because we figure that TFL car eventually become TFL EV, in case you're curious. But there is an interesting dynamic at play right now, and many electric car insiders really hate Toyota. I mean, just really hate the company. They
yes,
feel like
very much
they
so.
feel like Toyota has actually hindered and has gone out of their way to not only slow down, but in fact stop electric vehicle adoption. So there is a lot of dislike for that company from the EV purist, for what it's worth.
And I think that's silly because I think Toyota really has done a great job in solidifying the hybrid in the modern day market. Do you remember when Toyota launched the hybrid and other manufacturers started coming out with their own hybrids? They had to license that technology from Toyota. Do you remember that? Like the old Escape hybrids used basically Toyota Synergy Drive technology.
Yeah, I don't have a horse in this race, so I'm just saying, I'm just kind of passing along and being a journalist as to what's going on in that world.
I think hybrids are great. When I was in Japan and a couple years ago, we learned that the vast majority of new cars sold there are hybrids. And I think there's a stigma in the US that they're for like green people who want to go drink kale shakes and wear tie-dye on the weekends, right? But the hybrid technology is an amazing thing because it not only offers a better economy, but as the supercars proved, like the Porsche 918, right, it can offer insane amounts of performance. Wrangler did that too with the 4xe. That 4xe with the electricity, especially at altitude, that thing was a monster from 0 to 60.
The downside of hybrids, of course, is that you're carrying around, you know, a battery and an electric motor and a gas engine. So you're carrying around a lot of weight, necessarily not for a lot of benefit. Right. Anyway, before we wrap this up, let's talk about electric trucks again. Let's take it back to trucks. What do you think is going to happen, Tommy? So as you know, as you guys have been following Rivian, my gosh, they keep putting off and you guys keep sending us pictures of Rivians. We know they're out there. Thank you very much. But at this point, I just want to see, I'm feeling very frustrated with that company because once again, it was supposed to, the first ones were supposed to come in July, now they're saying September. Cybertruck, right, same thing. Initially, I went to the launch of the Cybertruck. It was supposed to be out by the end of this year. Now we're probably looking realistically more like summer of next year. You know, Lightning.
If Cybertruck is out before 2023, I will eat my left shoe. I'm going to be surprised by that.
Ford has said Lightning is going to be coming out next summer. We shall see, right? With their production woes with the Bronco, you know, it's hard to not take that with a grain of salt. But I'm really worried and very concerned that the people who have signed up for these things, right? I think the Lightning has 120,000 orders according to Ford. Same thing with the Rivian. I think the Cybertruck got like 1 million orders. I mean, who's buying these things, right? Are they people who are truck people, or are they city people who think it'd be cool to have an electric truck? Because if you're a city person and you put your money down on a Rivian, you might be able to live with, but a Lightning or a Cybertruck, I don't know how you're going to live with that thing in a city, in any big city. Forget New York, forget Chicago, forget LA, because these are big trucks. They will not fit in your garage, and they will barely fit in the parking garage. And if they have big batteries, I don't know where you're going to charge them. So I got this like sneaking suspicion that a lot of people who are urban have put, you know, live in the cities, have put money down on these trucks, but they don't understand what it really means to drive a full-size truck and live with a full-size truck.
They'll figure it out pretty quick. Juan says, if Armageddon hit, would you choose a Suzuki Samurai in 32s or a Defender popping tires left and right? Which would you choose? Those are both two terrible choices because if Armageddon hits, I think gasoline's going to be hard to find. So you'd be better off with a Nissan Leaf and solar panels.
How about Andres Bohanka?
No, it's gasoline too.
That thing's going to be
gasoline
bulletproof.
too. You know what I would take though?
What?
I'd take my Mercedes diesel because you can run that thing on vegetable oil and olive oil and all that stuff.
I think you're right. That
You can
diesel,
grow your own food, fuel.
and that diesel will, EMP, you know, that electric magnetic pulse, right? Mm-hmm. That diesel will not stop running unless you actually somehow, you know, stop it from getting air or fuel.
Juan, thank you for the donation, much appreciated. Travis gave us a donation here. Is it possible to set up a TFL Studios? Is it possible to set up TFL Studios as a YouTube channel, maybe as a paid subscription channel? Want to support but don't want to make a Patreon? Yeah, we've thought about it, but we kind of decided against it because we kind of want to keep our content free and out there and accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a good the thing about that is there's a good lesson with Motor Trend. If you guys, you know, we started this, 2009, and Motor Trend, first Stop Cow got reached 1 million subscribers, and then Motor Trend and The Drive both, they got funding from YouTube to produce videos, and then Motor Trend decided that they were going to make themselves into a subscription model, and I don't think in the long run it's actually served them. I know you had a Motor Trend subscription, but even you kind of...
Well, it's great, but I mean, the quality was excellent. They have some amazing
content. Out of it. Yeah.
But the issue is I binge it for a week, and then I end up paying $5 a month, and then the content just doesn't come out frequently
And
enough.
I also feel like people are getting really hammered now with all these subscription models, and I'm so grateful when you guys choose to become patrons of TFL or even give us donations. But I feel like everybody now is following the model, right? Between your phone and all the different, I mean, God, there's dozens of now subscription-based channels, everything from Hulu to Netflix to Amazon, right? It's all getting a little out of control.
Yeah, I agree. It's lots of the viewers are really interested today. We got a lot of them coming in actually just now, so we'll keep going for just a little bit longer.
Okay.
Lots of questions here. Let me find a good one. Why is the Bronco going to be sold in other countries? Have they talked about that?
I think they're just happy to build the ones that are ordered and supposedly delivered in America. I don't know if Ford has even gotten that far. Maybe they have in their thinking, but right now Ford is really struggling to meet demand for the Bronco. And I'm very fortunate, as you know, we have a Bronco. Thanks to our friend Tim, we're doing it, the series as a thank you to the Ronald McDonald House. So if you guys are out there looking for a charity to support, that's a great charity. It's a home away from home for sick families with sick kids with families. It's a place to stay in town when they're in the hospital. So thank you, Tim. But I feel very fortunate that we got one of the early ones. And like I say, I think they're just struggling to make the demand doable, buildable here in America.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on there, Dad. Bronco Sport versus Bronco. We'll do that comparison if we have a chance to get our hands on the Bronco Sport.
Sport is actually really good.
Yeah, people don't
really
give the little guy as much credit as they should. So it's based on the C2 architecture, which is the Ford Escape. It's the Ford Maverick, the little truck we talked about, and the Bronco Sport. Now, if you get the Badlands Bronco Sport, there's this really interesting twin clutch rear diff setup that's very effective at distributing torque left and right. I think it's the best I've ever had on the rollers. So very cool there.
Would you say it's probably the best non-low range vehicle you could buy if you want something that you can actually take off-road that doesn't actually have a low range?
Yes, it is. I will say that. It's
Fair
not
enough.
quite as good as the Cherokee Trailhawk, which has an actual locker and a dual range set of gears.
So outside of the Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk.
But that one does have a low range.
Yeah.
We got a lot of questions about the Nissan 400Z.
Yeah, so here's what happened with the 400Z. We did a video on it from the Chicago Auto Show. It's called the Proto, right? The Z Proto stands for prototype. And it was going to be unveiled at the New York Auto Show. And they just canceled the New York Auto Show, unfortunately. But I got an email yesterday from Nissan saying that they're still going to unveil the Z. But we weren't going to go anyway because the Proto is 95% of the final production. But the good news is there's a big Z-Con coming up in the Springs. And so they're going to take the vehicle, they're going to have, I think, a couple of them. They're going to take one of them, one of the actual real ones, and they're going to bring it down here to the Springs for Z-Con, like 1,000 people down there for that. I think it's at Pueblo actually, and they'll have it there, and we're going to go see it there. So we will have a video, and we will get hands-on with the actual one. But if you look at the video that we did with the Proto, it's pretty much it. I fell in love with it, Tommy. I thought it was great. I just wish they had made, at least a nod to electrification. I think I really wish somebody besides Tesla would build an electric sports car. Right? Manufacturers are always like, hey, we're looking for white space, which is someplace where nobody else is at. But every electric car is now. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Every electric car is either a sedan or a crossover. I get the crossovers, but I don't get the sedans. Sedans aren't selling in America. No one is buying sedans, and yet, like, what's the one? What's the really expensive one that's coming very soon?
The Tesla?
No, the Tesla competitor.
Mercedes EQS.
No, the Tesla competitor. The guys.
Lucid Air.
What?
Lucid Air.
Lucid Air, yeah, the Lucid Air, which I actually just got. I just was in Oak Brook Shopping Center, and they have a Lucid store. Oh. And I got up close with the Air, but I'm like, why are you building a sedan? And especially with the Plaid out, why don't you build anything but build a minivan, or build a convertible, or build a sports car? But why does it have to be a sedan?
So Steve asked a good question, and I'm sorry I haven't got your question, Steve. He's been very patient. Any idea why no manufacturer makes a diesel-electric HD vehicle? So I think part of that is
expensive. It's so expensive.
Expense is a big deal, and weight. So diesels are very expensive to make, and they're very heavy. Electric cars are relatively inexpensive to develop, but expensive to make and very heavy.
Batteries are heavy.
And I also think that there's a fundamental marketing challenge there. I think the manufacturers see electrification and diesels as two very different, uninterchangeable customer groups. From the companies I've talked to, the folks that are building EVs are tailing to one group of people from socioeconomic political status, and the people who are doing the diesels are in another. But there's a cool potential there. So we've talked about plug-in hybrids in this live show, right? Yeah. The other option besides plug-in hybrids is something called the range extender.
The Rex.
The Rex.
Like the i3.
And yeah, there's pretty much only been only one mass-produced range extended vehicle. And the way a range extender works is it's an electric car. So you drive it like an electric car. You have to charge it up, unlike a plug-in hybrid. But in an emergency situation where you run out of electricity, there's a small supplemental gasoline engine that acts as a generator.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, but it's got to be a small engine.
Yep.
Because the issue with plug-in hybrids is they're not very good electric cars because they're lugging around these giant engines that are just sitting dormant, right? A Rex has a much smaller, lightweight engine.
The one on the BMW is a 600cc Kimco,
and
which is weird.
It only makes 34 horsepower, and this is the important part. It'll only really maintain 55 or 60 miles per hour when you're running on the gasoline engine.
Where are you going with this?
Well, I'm going with this is that the point of a Rex is to get you to the next charger, but how about an HD truck that's electric with a diesel Rex? Yeah. So imagine an F450 or an F350 or a Ram 3500 with like a 250 kilowatt hour battery pack that can go 300, 350 miles on a charge. And then they have a 3-cylinder diesel, which will only propel the vehicle maybe at 55 miles an hour, but will be just enough to get you to the next charging station.
Which will hopefully, well, potentially, also help solve the major problem with electric truck towing, which is when you pull up to the charger, you're going to block every unit.
Yes, towing.
You will.
For
unless
sure.
you unhook.
Yeah,
So yeah, or a serial. How about a serial, like a locomotive? How about a serial electric?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, but locomotives are a very different use case in that they typically maintain one speed, a set speed for a continuous.
So the way a locomotive works is it's got a diesel engine that works as a generator to the electric motor, right? So
well, that's what a Rex is, though. It's just a
Rex is a small one. A diesel. I mean.
But keep in mind, so the diesel is a good idea as a generator because diesels are very efficient at a constant RPM at lugging a electrical system to produce electricity. And on a train, it's perfect because they're maintaining a set speed over many, many, many miles. It's a little bit different when you're trying to launch constantly.
Wow, Tom, we've been going almost an hour. That's pretty. It feels like 5 minutes. Thank you guys for sticking with us this long, and thank you for joining us. Let's wrap this up. So I'm sorry, no show on Monday, but we'll be back at our usual time the following week on a Monday after we get back from doing the series we're doing, which is, of course, for a few bucks less. So I'm really excited. Initially, we gave the team $5,000 to buy a cheap truck. This time, just for fun, we said, you know what, let's try it with 2,500. And that was an idea that was good until, of course, used vehicle prices shot up like 30–40%. And so the vehicles that these boys bought were certainly interesting for $2,500. One could call them
clapped out.
One could call them
Yes.
issues. And then stuff had to get fixed, but we couldn't fix it because that would be
cheating.
Yep.
Yes, it's an interesting series, so be sure to stay tuned. If you want a sneak peek at what the vehicles are, go to TFL Classics and you will see what 2 of them are, actually. And yeah, the TFL Classics YouTube channel has a bunch of stuff on that site.
Yeah, and if you're looking, like I said, if you guys are looking for a place to go and see all of our videos, podcasts, news, just go to TFL-studios.com. I guess somebody had TFLstudios.com, right?
Oh, bummer.
Bummer. Who had TFL Studios? Who would have thunk?
Probably someone that wants to sell it to us for an exorbitant amount of money is probably who that person is.
They're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, TFL-studios.com, and you can grab yourself a little web app, or you can just go to one place where all the videos are at. And then this weekend we're going to have some really cool videos. So the Jeep going up Redcomb, me and you did that in electric mode if you want to see what that's like. Our mini drag race, our goofy drag race.
Doesn't Andre have the Ram 3500? He's got the expedition build.
Oh my God, yeah, this is so cool. I almost forgot. We partnered with 4-Wheel Camper. We didn't partner with them, but they lent us a Ram Cummins 3500 with the baddest ass. It's like this ultimate truck because it's got an American Cummins, it's got an Australian bed, and it's got the 4-Wheel Camper on top for the ultimate expedition vehicle. This thing is crazy, and so we've got our first video with it that Andre kind of gives you a walk around. It's almost like, you know what it's like? It's like a baby and affordable Earth Roamer. Wouldn't you say? It's that cool.
Well, you have to stay tuned.
Turning radius bigger than this building.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely an interesting one. So we'll see you guys next time on the TFL Know Live Show.
Yep, see you in about a week and a half. Ciao.